everyone, and welcome to Stan the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan, and this is the Blue Collar Wine Show, where I help you spend your wine dollars wisely. We are going to talk about whether or not you want to start a cellar. Now, I know a lot of you are younger. Maybe you're just starting to get into the wine world. You're just checking things out, and the idea of a cellar is kind of intimidating. And then maybe some of you are older and say, well, it's a little too late for me to start a cellar. Well, I say no to both of those. And I'm not talking, when I'm talking wine cellar, I'm not talking about buying some fancy room or some fancy refrigerator that keeps it at a perfect temperature. If you want to do that, go ahead, knock yourself out. I'm just talking about find a place in your home that you can start storing away a few bottles of wine. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be 100 bottles. It can be a couple of cases. But how many of you really thought it'd be cool to buy some wine and just let it age, whether it's 5, 10 years, and then pull it out and see how it turned out? Now, I'm not talking about collecting wine. That's a totally different subject. There's guys who collect wine, and they collect them so that later they can sell those wines. Now, we're talking some high dollar stuff. Totally out of my ballpark. I did an episode a while back, and it's gotten a ton of hits, like over 1,000 views, about can you age inexpensive wines. And I reviewed some of the wines in my cellar, which is just an old art room here in the studio. And I pulled out some 09 and 10 Bordeaux that were all under $15. And, you know, surprisingly, quite a few of them were pretty good. So aging wine is fun. Having a little cellar is fun. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. The main thing about a wine cellar is to make sure it's an area in your house that stays relatively cool. Now, there's no perfect temperature, but make sure there's not a huge variation in temperature, but be sure that it doesn't get warm. Definitely not over 50 degrees. Heat is not good for aging wine, just to be quite honest. Now, this is not going to be a normal run-of-the-mill how to age wine sort of deal. This is all from my gut. This is from my gut. This is from my experience in the wine world and what has worked for me. I believe that wherever you put your wine, it can get really cold. That's okay. I had a place where I kept wine for a long time, for like 9 years. And sometimes it would almost get freezing out in the garage. But that never hurt the wine. But they never got warm. So find a place that kind of stays below 50 degrees, doesn't have a huge amount of fluctuation. If it gets a little cold, that's okay. Here's where I've stored my wine. Out in the garage, in my closet, under my bathroom sink, under my house. Now I'm in a old artist's room with a sink. I think it was a dark room at one time. You don't want to get a whole lot of direct light on your wine either. So this is part one. I forgot to mention that. We're going to do another episode on this. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at 2 wines. And we're going to talk about why I chose these wines and why I think they might be candidates to age just a few years. And they're not expensive. They both run around $18. I got a good killer buy on this one. So we're going to get started on that right away. And we'll talk more about this cellar process. Find a place in your house, stays relatively cool. Doesn't have to be fancy. It's a place you can lay your bottles down. The reason you lay them down, if they have a cork, is to keep the cork wet so it doesn't dry out. So that's a key. You can lay them flat. You can put them at an angle. Whatever you want to do. Just kind of keep them so the cork stays wet. That's very important if you're going to put wine away for a little bit. Okay, remember, you don't have to spend a lot of money to start a little cellar, just to test out. Now, it is true, they always say that it's a good idea to buy 4 of the wines so that you can test it after a couple years, see how it's going. You know, that's okay. If you want to do that, if you can afford it, that's great. I've done it a couple of times. But what I like to do is buy a couple. Because then I think, okay, this wine will age 10 years, so I wait 3 to 4 years, and I open that one, and then I go, okay, I was right. Okay, you know, it's worked for me very well. So we're going to get started off with the 2015 Vindie Bordeaux Chateau. This rolls in at $18. Right there. Okay? Now, why did I pick this wine? Well, I go by vintage big time. I look, it doesn't take much. What was a great vintage in Bordeaux? Well, 15 was a great vintage in Bordeaux. along with 5, and there's a whole bunch of them, 10, 5, some better than others, but I like 15s. They've been very good to me, and I have a few 15s stored in there. This is a new one to me, but I know it's a 15, around 18 bucks. I think it's a great price if you're going to store wine. Let's look at the color. This is like really dark. I mean, like almost black rose petal sort of thing going on. See that? Okay. So there's 3 elements that I look for. You want to have good structure. What does good structure mean? Nice cedar tones, a little cigar box on the nose. Good structure means a balance of acidity, tannins, and fruit. You have to have those in harmony with each other. If you have those in the wine, not one so much over the other, they can be a little bit off, but they have to be fairly in harmony to create a wine that will age. A little tobacco going on, a lot of currant notes. I wonder if this gives a breakdown on whether it's mostly cab. No, I just picked this up at the store. I saw it was a 15, so I thought I'd give it a try. That's okay. A little bit of rose petal coming through on this one. I like the cedar box notes on this. Let's see what we get on the palate. This has good structure. Now on this one, the acidity is prominent. Very acidic. Bright, mouth puckering on the mouth. Get notes of currants. A lot of wood on this one, so there's a lot of wood tannins. Barrel aging gives that wood tannins to this. Very tight on the tannins. The cedar notes come through on the mid palate. The currants are there, not prominent though. This is old world wine. This is kind of what we expect when we taste an old world wine. And we'll talk a little bit about in the next episode about where to look for ageable wines, you know, in the under $30 range. I'm pretty sure you'll be interested in that episode. This is, now for me, I think this will age okay. It's not perfect though for aging. And here's why. The acidity is a little too prominent over the fruit. The fruit is there, but it's very muted and a lot of wood tannins. I like to hit a rose petal on the mid palate. A little bit of cranberry action going on. I'd say just from my experience in watching wines age, this one maybe 3 years. I think the acidity is a little bit over the top for the fruit and the tannins. Well, the tannins are pretty much there, but I just don't see enough fruit coming out to mature this wine to a level that you will see a better wine in 5 years. And that's really what we're looking for, right? We're looking for something that will reward us for having the patience to put it away. Little citrus coming through on this. It's a good Bordeaux, not my favorite that I've ever had by far. I'm going to go C+ on this Bordeaux. I think it's $18. I've tasted many Bordeaux. Better Bordeaux at that price. It's still really old world. I know a lot of my friends, my old world loving wine, you know, they love this type style of wine. It's great, but it's not age worthy. That cedar box is really there. I just think the tannins and the acidity so outweigh the fruit that the fruit will not come out and mature and round out, which is what we want. Now, we all know that Bordeaux are not fruit-driven wines, but we want a little more than that, just a little more to balance that out, to smooth it out. It's a C+ Bordeaux. I think it's good for those people who like that old world style, but it doesn't have that balance that I was talking about of acidity, fruit, and tannins. So we'll go C+. This is a pass as far as aging. Now, let's move on. I'm excited about this one. This is from 01 Vintners out of Washington. This is a 2013 Cabernet Sauvignon, Columbia Valley. Rolls in at $18. I got a steal on it at the store, so It's on ad right now, so I picked it up. Now, 13 is one of my personal favorite vintages out of Washington State. I love the 13 vintage. To find them is really difficult. When I found out this supplier had some 13, I jumped all over it. So 13 I found to be very ageable wines, most of them, not all of course. This is very dark. This makes the Bordeaux look almost like Pinot-like, just saying this is like black, dark, burgundy color right there. See that? Very, very dark. Are you liking that white card? I keep saying I'm going to get a bigger one, I just forget. Okay, let's see if we get on the nose. Perfumed currants, big time. I'm getting a little, almost a little raisin action. You got nice kind of a blend between violets and rose petal. Yeah, very deep on the nose. I'm curious what the alcohol content on this is. The alcohol content is 15%, so it's pretty, got some heat to it. I got that in the nose. You don't want it too high in alcohol to age necessarily. Means the fruit is there, but you know, if they're great winemakers, they can pull it off. I mean, there's some Chateau pops that are up in the 15 to 16 range, and they will age very well. Let's see what we get on the palate. Nice, nice currant notes, front to finish. Little grip action of tannins on the back end. Very smooth. This is a very smooth wine. I get some oak tannins on the back of the mid palate into the finish. Finish is very clean. It has acidity. The acidity is starting to die off, which tells me for this wine that it may be close to its apex or peak, where it is probably not going to age very much longer. Not surprising for some Washington wines. There are Washington wines that will age. I think an episode I did with my Winer of the Year, Barnard Griffin, the reserves, there were a couple in there that I know will age 10, 15 years. This will not. This is almost where it needs to be. And I think in another year it'll start disappearing a little bit more. So I'm a little disappointed I haven't found one, but once again, we're experimenting here. I have the advantage, of course, of being in the wine world. I get to taste a lot of wines, but for you, if you are looking to age wines, neither one of these are what I would call ageable wines, and hopefully you understand why. This is lacking the acidity. It has the tannins, they're a little soft, it definitely has the fruit, which you would expect, but it's just not going to age. And it's already, what, 8 years? Yeah, 8 years old. So, no, 7 years old. Sorry, no, 8. Yeah, 8 years old. My math is a little off. This is a beauty. It's got chocolate on the nose just right there. Yeah, it has a little leather. I just think the acidity is not enough to keep it going. I can feel it, that it's right there where it needs to be, and it's going to go down in the next couple of years. So, not an ageable wine, but very good right now. I'm going to go B+ on that wine right now where it is. Now, you've noticed on my show sometimes I will grade a wine a little higher, even though it's not necessarily user-friendly right at the point that I'm trying it. But that's because I understand that it will get better. And that's very important when you're tasting wine, is to see those elements in a wine that show you that it's going to age. And I hope after this episode you have a little better idea of what you want to do. Remember, you don't. Thanks for taking a little time out of your day. Stay tuned for part 2 of this. We'll talk a little bit more about some other things. Hopefully we can find, I think I'll bring 3 wines that might be able to age. In fact, I might pull one out of my cellar. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm getting up there, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your support. You keep watching, and I'll keep helping you spend your wine dollars wisely.